evening. Thank you for joining us tonight for our fourth board forum. My name is Stacy Demas, and I will be moderating it. And I thank Cynthia Brock for taking time for us and for everyone submitting questions ahead of time. Also, if you are interested in having a written question submitted, there is a piece of papers over there, and please feel free to slide them over to me when you are ready. So the program will go as follows. We have one fun question, and followed by the 9 serious questions of the actual job. And then, so we start out with 3-minute introductions, 1-minute responses, 30-second rebuttals if requested, and then 1-minute closures. Afterwards, as I stated before, 10 minutes for the press when we're done. So let's start off with 3-minute introductions, and I'm trying to think of the alphabet and whose name comes first. A, correct? All right. So go ahead.
Good evening. For those of you who haven't met yet, my name is Tiffany Kumar, and I'm honored to be running to be your Ward 4 Alderperson. When my mother came to this country with $400 sewn into the lining of her jacket, no one could have imagined that her daughter would be here today, fighting for change. Ithaca, as your public servant, I will fight boldly and use political power creatively to serve the people. I will not be the kind of politician whose version of looking smart boils down to throwing their hands up and giving excuses about why change is impossible. Change is possible if you have the courage to make it and a team to back you up. I'm so grateful to have an entire movement of people, the Working Families Party, student groups like the Cornell Democrats and Cornell Progressives, and community organizations like the Tenants Union, the Solidarity Slate, not just endorsing me, but working tirelessly to build and run this campaign because they believe in it. They know that my words do not ring hollow. I've earned my place in experienced progressive networks and electeds across the state, connecting me and Ithaca with grants and assistance that only comes from real progressivism. I'm really qualified for this job. In my past works in politics, I've run more campaigns, written more legislation, and registered more voters than my opponent, who, I'll remind you, was never elected to his position. In my time in Ithaca, I fought tirelessly on the front lines of this community. I know that change is possible here. I've stood with you on picket lines, marched for abortion rights, rallied for housing justice and gay rights. But while I stand with tenants at housing court, my opponent works to sabotage necessary laws like good cause eviction protections that would keep lease-abiding tenants from being discriminatorily evicted. He hides behind the same old hand-waving about why change is impossible that has stagnated our country's political system. He's a fake progressive, something Ithaca politics has been infamous for and that we don't need anymore. When I say that housing is a human right, when I say that all workers deserve dignity, when I say that individual taxpayers should not be shouldering the burden of solving issues caused by institutional evils, when I say that we deserve real progressive infrastructure reform and not just schedule changes for failing maintenance, I mean that these are the issues I not only experienced in legislative form, but also experienced firsthand. These issues matter to me. Not because I can put it on a mailer, but because it reminds me all too well of what my mother and I had to go through. Ithaca, I pledge to dedicate my life to fighting against the systems that oppress and divide us, and build a community where everyone can thrive and have their needs met. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. How's it going, y'all? Nice to see you. I want to start by thanking, I saw him before, but Patrick Churchill, I want to thank Secular for letting us use this space. I want to thank Stacy for moderating, Ed for putting this together, the City Democrats. And I want to thank my opponent for agreeing to this debate. I know Ed and I proposed this to him about 2 months ago, and I'm happy that we can finally do this in person, no less. My goal for this intro, really, I just want to give you a background on me, why I think you should vote for me, why I want to do this job, and encourage you to just get to know me better. Not just, we have an hour to talk to you. I'd love for you to speak with me afterwards, but my background. I've lived on West Campus in Hunts Bay for the past 2 years, just moved to any street, about to move east well in a couple months, so I've been in this district for about 3 years now. And I have a younger brother, I have a younger sister who I love dearly, and parents who, No, but my parents who've both been lifelong union members, I worked for Yahtzee Local 1 when I was in high school, and that's what brought me to Ithaca, was I came here seeing labor management disputes. That's why I came to ILR. And in ILR, resolution really became my passion, became my calling. How do you bring together people who vehemently disagree with each other, and especially those who call you stupid and say, no, I disagree with you? How do you get them to come here and come to a resolution together, and how do we move forward? So the opportunity to serve on council in October, I was very fortunate to have the trust of council to say, we want a college student, we want somebody for the first time in a decade to come here and to be a part of this budget season. I'm even more proud that through my hard work and my willingness to compromise, that all those who opposed me for my confirmation are now endorsing me for this race. So why me? It's those relationships. It's those council members, it's relationships with city staff, it's relationships with local small businesses, and relationships with individual community members to hear, what do you want, and how can I then get that done? We've already had lots of major accomplishments. I see Graham and the two of us work together to get millions of dollars for infrastructure in our district. Worked on getting a housing bill unanimously passed in just my first couple months in office. And if you saw any pink when you were walking here and pink on the floor, that was me and the city manager for all of our sidewalks looking to see what gets prioritized for the 2023 budget. But I want to keep doing this job not just to build on those relationships, because there is more that we can do. I think switching our green spaces in this district is important. Working with Cornell further to turn Educate into a park. Making sure that construction projects in the city, such as East Buffalo and Williams, are communicated better with residents. And even small things like how do we make sure there's not so much trash and crap and broken glass during move out through partnerships with the city and Cornell and with community residents. I really want to encourage you to come meet me. I don't know how much time I have left, but this is just an hour of us talking to you, and I really encourage you to come meet me. I put out palm cards, we've got stuff to say, come chat with me, come meet me. The best part of this campaign so far has been meeting individuals and saying, what ideas do you have, and how can I make that happen? Now, I think the most important well, is that a minute? Oh, I've got a minute. Okay, well, and I guess just that minute, I want to say, oh, that's it? All right, well, thank you. I appreciate it. We have more questions.
Yes, 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Alrighty, let's jump into our first fun question, which is, what is your favorite local comfort food when you're stressed out? Patrick.
All right, so Jack's Row down on Dryden is phenomenal, but you have to know how to order it, and that's the secret. I just want to tell you how to order it. They have weekday deals, so Fridays are free fries, Monday is cheesesteak, there's the hangover special on weekends. If you go to Jack's Row, don't just order something because it looks good. Look at the specials. They've got a beautiful shake and burger fry combo for $12. There's a super burger for $15. And if you do everything perfectly on Friday, you can have this monstrous things of mac and cheese, bacon, and fried chicken with free fries. And you're going to spend $9.77 including tax. That's the comfort food right here.
Well, Jack's is great. I do love Jack's. But there's a place that just opened, Louise. It's run by this really sweet Arab couple, and they really make really authentic food. It's really delicious. Huge portions, also very cheap, and it's a really like homey environment. They have like fun sodas. And it's always nice to go there and unwind, whether with friends or just after classes at work.
Thank you. Alrighty, so our first question. The city's fourth ward is mainly populated by students. If elected, your actions will affect our city for years to come. Even after you move on to the next stage of your life, how will you draw on your personal experience in Ithaca to address challenges that our city faces? And since you went first, Tiffany.
Thank you. That's a really good question. So in my time in Ithaca, I have fought on the front lines with community-based organizations. I feel really grateful to be connected to a lot of groups that have been fighting here in Ithaca, and I feel as if I can take my experience and my knowledge that I've gained from being on the front lines, from looking at these issues, and from seeing the ways that we can have material impact in our community, really helps me, I feel, sit in this position here today and come up with legislation that can be truly effective and that can be dictated and come up with by the community.
Sure, I mean, I think the most important thing is to understand that students make up 2/3 of the city population, but the permanent residents have been here for generations. And I think the most important thing we do in any sort of legislation is we engage students through the different avenues that we've done so far, but we really find the community organizations that bring permanent residents and their interests together with students who have their own interests as well. I think being a part of the College to Neighborhood Council, having partnerships with the College to Small Business Alliance, and finding where is the intersection between people who've lived here and who live here year-round, and the students who come and go every 4 years. It's it's important to listen to all their perspectives, but in any policy we're putting together, it should be at the behest of city staff experience, of people who've lived here's experience, and then our new experiences. You know, I've lived here only for 3 years at this point, and I have that perspective, but I'm incredibly grateful for the folks who've been here for generations, the folks who've been here for decades, and can tell me, hey, the Nines pizza was really good. And I don't know what that was like, and that's terrible, but it's bringing both together.
Oh, it's definitely terrible. All right, second question is, Ward 4 has historically had the lowest voter turnout and engagement in the city. What is your plan to engage students and young people in local politics?
Sure, so before council, I founded Cornell Votes. So this is a nonpartisan organization that worked to register voters, to get them absentee ballots, have them vote. My opponent in her intro said that she's registered more voters than anybody else, but through our work with Cornell Votes, we have 15,432 people registered in 2020. We had an 18.6% increase in voter turnout under my leadership, the highest increase in the Ivy League, the highest increase in the state, and one of the highest increases in the Northeast. So my experience in nonpartisan voter turnout really allows me to engage with students, regardless of whether or not they agree with me, regardless of whether or not they believe in me, and just the most important thing being, you just need to vote. And it's complicated. You know, it's working with the Board of Elections to get polling sites not at the town of Ithaca like this polling site is, moving them into West Campus, moving them to North Campuses. It's working with years of partnerships and nonpartisan voter turnout with legal voters, with the county ledge, with the city, to figure out how we get students involved, not just in this election, but especially in the ones that are in office.
May I repeat that, please? I was wondering how the rebuttals work. You said 30 seconds for rebuttal?
No, you each get a 1 minute to answer the question, and then if there's something.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So voter registration is something that's extremely important to me. In high school, I actually served as the voter registration representative for the United States Association of Secretaries of State, as well as for the YMCA of America. And in doing so, I was able to work with a lot of high schools all across the Northeast Coast, as well as colleges, to get students registered, especially students in marginalized communities and in communities where they may not have access to the kind of information required to register to vote. So for me, civic engagement is extremely important, especially for young people, and I have dedicated my life to getting people registered to vote all over the country. Thank you.
30 seconds.
No, sorry. Good, sorry. No, I know Stacy said that, how do we do that here? And it's fantastic, and voter registration work is incredibly important across the country. Work with organizations like the Andrew Goodman Foundation, who have honored Freedom Summer. But the most important thing is having the relationships with community members here, with the university administrators, with the county board of elections administrators, the way that we get polling sites in more places, that we get absentee ballots. The reason you all saw How Do I Vote in testing sites for all of 2020 is because of work our board has done.
However, this, oh, sorry. I agree. However, this voter registration rise that you supposedly brought about happened during the 2020 election, the highest voter turnout in U.S. history. The same result happened in every state. Voter registration went up about that amount. That was going to happen with or without you. Now, I know that you're comfortable taking credit for other people's achievements when you told people that I am only running because you paved the way for me. As a immigrant, first-gen woman of color, you don't know how many times people try to discredit the work I've done to get to where I am today. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so question number 3. Ithaca faces an historic housing crisis exaggerated by COVID-19 pandemic. How will you advance and support zoning reform to grow the stock of housing at all price points? And how will you advance legislation on good cause eviction? And I believe Tiffany's, yes.
So I believe that this has to be done in 3 steps. First, we need to reform our zoning laws to ensure that we can build housing upwards rather than outwards. Secondly, we have to build more housing, affordable housing, especially closer to the university, to ensure that students aren't moving further and further down the hill, farther away from the school where they attend. Thirdly, we need to keep people in their homes. Ithaca has a displacement issue. This is something I've said before and something I will continue to say. As our city populations increase, our their cause eviction protections, we are displacing Ithacans into places where they cannot access the resources they need, such as rural areas. I will fight to ensure that we have adequate tenant protections in this city. Thank you.
So you mentioned the first part of zoning, and I think the first thing in this question is understanding that Collegetown has a specific zoning than the rest of the district, and that historic districts take a lot of precedence in zoning changes we want to see. So I completely agree with my opponent that a housing supply is definitely the issue we have. And there's ways to solve those housing supply. It looks like changing the height variances that we're allowed within Collegetown, but it's also ensuring that if we're creating housing, that is creating it close to transportation. It's creating housing close to jobs. Because there's no good in having affordable housing if it's in the middle of nowhere and then they can't do anything. Unfortunately, most students aren't allowed to apply for Section 8 affordable housing because they're tied to their parents' income or they're tied to federal plus loans. But having affordable housing in a space for permanent residents, as well as creating more student housing without displacing the folks in East Buffalo, East Seneca, Schuyler, and North Quarry, there are ways for us to change the zoning laws in this region while also creating opportunity through partnerships with the Collegetown Small Business Alliance, through partnerships with different stores and jobs that get people the food they need, the jobs they need, and the housing they need in one space.
Alrighty, next question. How would you work to create more equitable access to affordable housing in Ithaca? And do you think accessory dwelling units, ADUs, should be permitted in the city of Ithaca? Why or why not? Patrick, you're up first.
Sure, I know we just spoke a little about the affordable housing, but for ADUs, it comes back to the housing supply question again. You know, the ADU discussion has been happening since 2020, and my predecessor, Steve Smith, really briefed me well on the issues that we have at hand. ADUs have the potential to expand the housing supply, but without effective legislation in other areas, such as short-term rentals and Airbnbs, ADUs aren't going to solve our housing issue, because if ADUs just get converted into student rentals, that they just turn into frat houses down in the district, or if those ADUs just turn into Airbnbs that then get used for tourism, we're not solving the housing supply issue. So I am excited, and I do think there's potential in ADUs, but it's almost as more important to give the city staff the time they need to investigate Airbnb and ADU rentals as they've been doing for the past couple months. We talked in our Planning and Economic Development Committee, I think 2 months ago, that the city gave us a report on Airbnbs, but they're giving us another one in a couple more months. And then once we can solve the Airbnb issue, we solve the housing supply issue, and then we can look at ADUs.
Mr. Mehler, what's an ADU?
I'm sorry, it's an accessory dwelling unit.
Thank you.
It's like another house in your backyard, kind of.
So you already know my opinion on building more affordable housing, but further than that, I'm staunchly pro ADUs. I believe that people should deserve to age in peace, especially the elderly, those who want to mainly use them, and with their families. When my grandparents were searching for a home, we were moving around a lot, something that was extremely difficult and weighed on my family was figuring out how we were going to accommodate them. We have to ensure housing flexibility and increase the housing supply. Sorry? We have to increase housing flexibility. When families change, people move around, houses don't, and people have empty rooms, and we have a houseless population that needs them. So I am staunchly in favor of ADUs.
30 seconds. Oh.
Again, I just want to say, because you mentioned the houselessness problem, I really believe that there are solutions that we can solve with that. And I think the Tides proposal, which would help with our homelessness and candidates and dealing with the city, there are ways that we can start to prevent houselessness now, stop making it reoccurring, make it as infrequent as possible. But it's risky of us from the city to build housing and allow zone changes that aren't going to be used for its purpose, which is why we have to give city staff the time and patience and trust their expertise to deal with their short-term rentals, and then we can look at ADUs.
Would you like to respond?
I think something that you'll see a lot in this debate, if you pay attention to my opponent, is that you're going to hear a lot of long and convoluted explanations as to why we can't do something. I plan on fighting boldly for change. I'm looking for creative policy solutions, and I'm a staunch advocate for tenants' rights. Thank you.
Yeah.
Alrighty, number 5. What are some of the challenges you see in the 4th Ward related to safety, traffic, and walking/cycling infrastructure? I believe it's Tiffany.
So infrastructure reform, especially progressive infrastructure reform, is something that is extremely valuable to me. I believe that we should be ensuring that Ithaca is more accessible, especially for the elderly and disabled. I'm very grateful to have a lot of connections to progressive organizations such as Local Progress and the Complete Streets Initiative, which sets aside state grant money in order to do progressive infrastructure reform. And this is something that I uniquely have access to as a progressive candidate, and something that I promise to fight to secure for Ithaca. Thank you.
Sure, and a little response to that previous part, I'm 21, I think you're 20 or 19? 20? There are people in this room who have more expertise than us than we have been alive for. And trusting city staff is not a convoluted way of getting around a problem, it's to admit that we are not experts in these fields. Trusting the people who have lived here for decades and who know how to solve problems in the city, it's partnerships with them, not partnerships with organizations who promise us money we don't see it. It's partnerships with city staff who fight like hell to get us grants, to get us partnerships with the state and with the federal government. You know, you're mentioning transportation. If you only get 1 mile, the city gets 1 mile of the 70 miles we have of sidewalk every year. And it's important to have a relationship with those people so that we can get more of the district, or more of the mile in our district. And so, you know, it comes as simple sometimes as the corner of East Buffalo and Stewart. Now it's a flashing yellow this way, and a flashing yellow this way. It takes an hour to sit with Aaron and Eric of city transportation to say, can we please say this, and say, okay, but we have to go through these analyses, and then we'll go back to it. And it's working with them to use those analyses to help us.
So number 6. Are both of you aware of flooding risks to the city's low-lying housing stock and sewage treatment plant? And how would you address these challenges on council? I believe Patrick is up first.
Sure, so as everybody knows, the first set of FEMA maps came out, which changes which parts of Ithaca are now considered in flood risk zone. What that does is there's a couple things. It does devalue the property values who are in those flood zones, and for those who do choose to stay there, they now have to buy flood insurance or have to pay for more expensive flood insurance. I'm very grateful that the city has a comprehensive floodplain management regulations that allow us to make it cheaper for folks in the city to have a cheaper flood insurance, because the city has committed to building more dams, to making it safer. And so I give a lot of credit to the folks in transportation and sewage and water who look at this. But there are things we can do now to help with flood management. It looks like funding IFD with more water pumps, and the fire department for water pumps for when houses get flooded. But it also knows that the final maps aren't going to come into place until spring of 2023. So community feedback from all of you and from city council advocates who know how the city's plan works and who know what previous suggestions with FEMA look like, that's how we reduce flood, that's how we have more flood mitigation and reduce risk to the city homeowners.
Yes, I am aware of the new flood maps, and again, these consequences of global climate change, which is a problem happening all over the world, should not be burdened and put on individual taxpayers, especially marginalized communities at the front lines of climate change. It should be the institutions who have more than enough wealth to solve these issues. We should be holding them accountable. Additionally, there are many ways in which we can be working smarter to secure funding to combat climate change and flooding. With my free TCAP plan, oftentimes it costs more to operate our tills for fare collection than the fares amount that we bring in. There are ways in which we can find creative legislative channels rather than simply putting the burden on taxpayers to ensure that the costs of climate change are put on the people who are causing it and the people who can bring change. Thank you.
30 seconds. Hold on.
I mean, you say work smarter, but to me that feels like you're just dismissing all the work our sustainability office has done. I mean, Dr. Luisa Iri-Torres and the city have brought in hundreds of millions of dollars to make us the first city in the world to be fighting climate change through full electrification, through everything that we're doing. And they haven't spent a single taxpayer dollar in what we're doing. So it's not burdening taxpayers. And, you know, I just have to address the free TCAP for a second. The council doesn't control the TCAP. TCAP is 5 council members, 5 county members, and 5 cornell members. And no member of council has any influence in TCAP.
So firstly, I think that the work that Ithaca has done in terms of climate change is amazing. I'm proud to be an Ithacan. However, there has to be ways in which we can address this new issue of flood maps, which, as I've heard in my canvassing, is a huge concern from taxpayers. I'm trying to address issues and fight boldly against saying that simply it's out of my hands and everyone else has to deal with the consequences. Additionally, there are a lot of laws, creative policy. I'm a lifetime law. I love creative policy. There's currently a Vermont just passed a tax credit to help relieve the burden of flood insurance. Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty, question number 8. Oh, no, 7. I jumped ahead now. Okay, what is your overall position on reimagining public safety plan and the working group's recommendation to the city? And Tiffany, you're up first.
I know that our criminal justice systems, especially policing, have historically been used to perpetuate systemic racism and violence in marginalized communities. I applaud the RPS committee for working to change our narratives and to bring these issues to the forefront. And I think we need to go farther. As someone with a labor background, I think that only 5 unarmed responders would cause them to be overworked. I think that, and this is no fault of the committee because the previous council didn't let them touch the police budget, all police reform has to be accompanied with a reallocating of resources, to police accountability boards, to more unarmed responders, to social service experts who can handle the 1/3 of calls that do not require an armed response. Things like drug use, things like mental health issues, things like houselessness. We have to ensure that our communities are protected and that they feel safe. Thank you.
I'm incredibly thankful to Eric and to Karen and the folks who took the time to make our report. And as I've said before, we agree with the vast majority of what's in the report. But there are parts of it and how we're going about it that I think are important to state. It's important to me that we be more transparent about how we're doing our PS. You know, we've spent hours in council debating it, and a lot of it's been executive session. And I was happy that as council, I was able to bring out just parts of civil service so we can publicly talk on the floor about what it is we're discussing. There's lots of legal aspects to this that the city attorney has advised us for, and we trust the city attorney's counsel for how we should be going about it. I fully agree that we should have more unarmed responders to deal with mental health issues that police aren't trained for. But it does worry me that if we're as a community deciding what we're going to do with our policing, that there isn't a just transition for these officers. If we agree that we're going to change the budget, if we're going to pay them less, if we're going to, in turns, demote the chief and deputy chiefs, there has to be a just transition, just as we would with climate change jobs.
Almost a year ago today, I lost a close friend of mine to an act of police brutality. I watched it happen. And to me, there is no bigger importance than ensuring that our marginalized communities can feel safe. Patrick, I ask you, where was his just transition? Thank you.
I feel sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that that's happened to your friend. And it shouldn't happen to anybody. And that's why we are trying to do this reimagining that we're doing. But what's really important to me is that for those who have done something wrong, we do still need to have accountability. I know you are League of Women Voters 411. At the bottom of your profile, you've said that you're proud to have the endorsement of the Democratic Socialists of America. And their stance on this is to defund the police by rejecting any expansion of police budgets or scope of enforcement while cutting budgets annually towards zero. You can't, it's not community policing if you're taking from a national organization stance.
Number 8. Homelessness is a significant issue in the city. What is your opinion about the TIDES program put together by the working group? For those who are unaware of what the TIDE program is, it's Ithaca's possible new strategy with the jungle situation and homelessness in the city.
Sure, so I want to first thank Cynthia, who's here, who has really been championing finding some way to help our most vulnerable population. I've taken the time to walk with the folks who work at Walmart and Lowe's, to go into the encampments with them and speak with folks about what they feel the situation is to be. I think this guy who I met when I first went, I was nervous. I was nervous to meet folks. You see needles on the ground, you see human feces on the ground, and it's a scary place. And this one guy, Mike, I was telling him, he's like, why are you here? And he said, well, why wouldn't I be here? It's harder in Rochester. I came here from Binghamton. This is the place to be. And when you speak with folks, and you speak with those who are there and the lifestyle that they're living, it's clear that you can't just put them in housing and think that that's going to be the solution. We can't just buy, I think about an opinion on it, you can't just buy a hotel and put them in it and think it's going to work. We have to partner with the county, we have to partner with the state to get services to these people at all times, to protect them from each other and from themselves.
First off, I take issue with the idea that we need to protect the houseless community from themselves. We, first and foremost, cannot be criminalizing houselessness. I support the creation of a encampment zone where houseless communities can stay without being interviewed by the police. However, when laws like this were passed in Texas, Nevada, Colorado, effectively, it was just moving the houseless population out of sight, out of mind, rather than coming up with real housing solutions to help them. I believe that we cannot be criminalizing houselessness, which is effectively what happened. You were arrested if you were found outside of your zone. I think that the issues in the jungle are due to not enough affordable housing and because people are not being kept in their housing, which are two pillars of my campaign. Thank you.
Have you
Hold
spoken?
on. Wait.
Have you spoken with them? It's just all I can ask. They don't want to be put in housing. These are people who have made these lifestyle choices. And it's horrible. I mean, the worst thing for me is I watched this video from the side of Walmart. There's sex trafficking. Kids. There's kids. If you tell me that they don't want that, there's no child who wants to be sex trafficked. And if you speak with the people who are there, affordable housing isn't the answer. They don't want to be bothered. They don't want to be touched by us. They don't even want to know that they're on city property. They just want to be on their own.
I agree that an overly paternalistic approach would be bad. However, tied without more details, I worry that it will become just as overly paternalistic, enforcing our ideas in the houseless community rather than allowing them as individuals to decide and as Ithacans. Thank you.
All right. So, question number 9. You're both seeking the Democratic primary nomination. What does it mean to you to be a Democrat? And do you pledge to support the winner of the primary if you lose, and to not run as the third party or an independent candidate?
I've been a Democrat for my whole life, and I think at its core, it means fighting for change. And that is something I've always been proud to. I applied for and earned the WOP endorsement because I believe in their values, and I wanted to be the representative of those values in November as the Democratic nominee. To that end, my team and I worked hard this election, and we fully expect to win the Democratic primary on June 28th. Until that time, we don't feel the need to make any rash decisions about running in November. Thank you.
I thought that was a freebie. Of course. I'm a Democrat, and no matter what, I'm going to support the Democrat that wins. It concerns me immensely. If you're really a Democrat, why are you pledging to run against one in the primary? You know, we've only got 2 weeks. We'll know what happens in 3 or 4 weeks. It is part of our bringing us together, part of having a solid unification against things like far-right extremism, against things like that, that if we don't support Democrats no matter what, that's why we're going to lose the midterms. I fully pledge to support the Democrat no matter who it is. Whether I win this race or not, you're going to see me trying to get as many college students, as many people to vote as possible in November 2022. So I just like to I pledge to support the Democrat no matter what. Do you, Tiffany?
Alrighty, and also I wanted to correct myself in saying I meant to say unhoused and not homeless, so I just want to add an end to that question. As well as, so we came to the end, and you know, this has been a wonderful.
Would you mind if I
You want to give rebuttal?
Yes,
Oh,
please.
my bad.
Sorry,
Go
I
for it.
was waiting for the clapping. But yeah, so first of all, I am loyal to the Democratic Party, but instead of being loyal to the two-party system, I'm loyal to my endorsers, and this is something that I have to have a conversation with them as a community-based candidate. Additionally, if there was a Republican running in the race, my answer would be totally different, but there's not. I don't know what the fear-mongering is for. But I have a strong and supportive team around me who has been singularly focused on winning the primary in June. If we don't win, then we will regroup, but for now, we haven't made any plans to regroup.
You didn't answer the question. You don't, why, it blows my mind. The only people you should be beholden to in this race is the Democratic primary voter. diverse. And you're not. And that's what scares me, is that you've said, on quote, in your vote 411, I'm beholden to the Ithaca Attendance Union, to the Ithaca Democratic Socialists of America, to the Ithaca Working Families Party. Not once in my hearing, in the Democratic primary, I'm committed to the Democratic voters who are here.
Well, this has been a very lively debate. I'm really happy the way it's turned out, and I'm really grateful to have both of you candidates on the vying for the Democratic primary nomination. We are a big tent, and we always have to figure out how to resolve those issues, and I think you guys are the exemplary example of how we move forward as a party and as a community. So also, I do, since I did not submit a question, primarily because I don't live in the fourth ward, but I do have a question. And as a woman of color, there are often microaggressions in the workplace, city government, X, Y, and Z, you name it. When have you seen it, and what did you do in those situations? And since Tiffany, you answered the last question.
Could you repeat what you asked? I couldn't hear you. Could you face us? Okay.
Yeah, I can totally repeat what I said. So basically what I was saying is the question goes to microaggressions in the workplace, in any situation. Women of color often face them, or people of color often face microaggressions, whether it's in the workplace, in the classroom. And my question goes to, when have you seen them, and what did you do about them?
Thank you.
Sure, so I spoke initially about my background being in conflict resolution. I'm the primary, basically, plea dealer for when a student violates the code of conduct and they have a case against Cornell. We as student mediators come in and try to resolve whatever dispute happened. That ranges from everything from public urination to student frat parties, but it also comes to misunderstandings. I think a great example you told me is there was a student who, she was a Muslim woman, and she had taken something from the Cornell store. And so the Cornell store had said, you've taken something over the $100 limit, it's over the thing, you get this mark on your record. And when I spoke with them, I said, what was the problem? And she said, the worker looked at me and said that you can't wear that. And that blows my mind for a host of reasons. The fact that it's Cornell, the fact that we're here, the fact that it was in a public space that's recorded. And that's what came up. She took something and she said, you're hiding something, you're hiding something, you're hiding something. And she wasn't. And so what I try to, really quickly, we're trying to solve the situation is to tell the store manager, we need to get you something trained. We need to get you to realize something else, because this is somebody who's done nothing wrong. This is somebody who you've misunderstood. Okay?
As a queer, first-gen Asian American woman in politics, I've, experienced a lot of microaggressions in my life. And what I've learned, and this also ties into my labor background, is that the only solution to it is collective action against institutions that perpetuate it. Because it's not individuals. It is institutions like Cornell University. If you look at the news right now, there's a Title IX violation going around. It is institutions such as Cornell who are perpetuating these acts of racism and go even beyond microaggressions. My solutions to this would come in the form of collectively coming together and standing up against these institutions. Because as women, as people of color, our power comes from working together. Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, this concludes the question and Q&A section of the debate. Now we will move into closings. As a reminder, it's 1 minute for your closing statements. And since Patrick, you went first, Tiffany.
Ithaca, I will continue to show up for this community. I'm the experienced, qualified candidate with a passion for public policy and a coalition both inside and outside of the Ithaca city government who are fighting alongside me to bring the change that we deserve. Ithaca deserves housing justice, beautiful roads, walkable communities, and a government who will fight for them rather than pushing the burden of these issues onto taxpayers and marginalized communities. A lot of people who call Ithaca home now weren't born and raised here. When I first came to Ithaca, I looked at this beautiful city, and I looked at the community of people fighting tirelessly to protect each other. I felt like, for the first time in my life, like I could belong somewhere, and like my contributions can have a material impact. Ithaca is my home. It will always be my home now, and I promise to dedicate myself to fighting tirelessly for building a community that I know we deserve and that I know we can achieve. And that requires bold, progressive change. Thank you.
I think the only thing I want to really leave you with experienced you. My opponent said you have experience in a labor background. I want you to think about what that means. My labor background is working in a union high school. It's my parents working in a union, it's coming to a union school, a union town, to learn how to resolve conflict through creative solutions, to have change sustained. And so I really want you to think about the experience for you. Does experience mean I've done something with somebody, or does it mean I've built something with somebody? Because in Ithaca, what I've done in the past 3 years and what I plan to do and stay here even after I graduate is to keep building relationships. And those relationships are how change is sustained. Because you never know when I get hit by a bus. But if I get hit by a bus, the work needs to keep going. And so finding people who carry out what you want to see happen is most important. I'm running for the seat because I don't want to bow down and say, these are all my ideas and this is what I want to do. I want to hear what your ideas are and use my experience in getting deals done and getting work done to make your ideas happen. Thank you.
All right, you guys are great, man. I am really impressed for being under 25. Like, I was nowhere near as confident as you guys, so big ups. So I just want to thank the city committee and the pastor for allowing us to use this beautiful space and the microphones and the technology, as well as our city chair, Ed Swayze, who's here to stand up, give a round of applause. And this concludes our forum for tonight. Please remember that you have Q&A with the press, and then if anybody wants to stay after that, they're more than welcome to ask questions if you have time. Other than that, good night. Stay tuned.